All right, look. NFL head coach power rankings. The 33rd team did an exceptional job with this list. Well, depending on...
Yeah, exceptional job. How do you define that?
Depending on how you value each head coach. Before we throw up the list, just to remind everybody, my top 5 for context.
Yeah, refresh us.
Andy Reid was 1.
Kyle Shanahan
was 2. Tomlin was 3. John Harbaugh was 4. Sean McVay was 5. Okay? Brian Daboll wasn't in my top 10. Jaguars coach. Why am I forgetting his name? Doug Peterson was in the top 10. I think he made it at 10 on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Belichick out of it. Lucas, go ahead, throw up the graphic. These are the top 32 coaches in the NFL according to the 33rd team. And look, I want to know the criteria. That's my biggest question whenever we have these conversations. What's the criteria? If it's based on historical success, Belichick should be 1. If it's based off of a mixture of, your standing in the game along with your recent standing in the game, Belichick should be in the top 15, but nowhere near 2. So I already have a problem there. Tomlin at 3, I love it, I respect it. Peyton at 4, very similar to mine, love it and respect it. Sirianni at 5, love it and respect it. Shanahan at 6, I think too low. Sean McVay at 7, again, recency, right? They were a bad team last year. He was a Super Bowl champion the year before. One of the better coaches, young coaches we've ever seen in the NFL.
Right.
Brian Daboll at 8. I can't do that. Pete Carroll, to me, did a better coaching job last year than Brian Daboll did. I thought Pete Carroll was exceptional. Daboll, rightfully the coach of the year. But Pete Carroll, I'm sorry. I mean, what he's done is tremendous.
And this is the problem I have, too. With Daboll, you're basing it off last year.
But
Pete Carroll, you have last year and legacy, but then Sean Payton hasn't coached in a couple of years, and he's fourth.
Up there. I know.
It's all over the place.
Peterson at 10, I agree with. I think John Harbaugh too low. Zach Taylor, I can get behind at 12. Mike Vrabel, I love the guy. Way too high. Way too high.
Really?
Yes.
Because would you agree, and I'll say this, and I don't want to speak for you, I would take Dan Campbell over everybody behind him. I believe that.
You would take Dan Campbell over Mike McDaniel, Kevin O'Connell?
I said behind him.
Oh.
17 to 32. I'll take Dan over.
You agree with where Dan is?
You could maybe argue, like Kevin O'Connell, for example. I mean, he won more games last year. But, yes, everyone behind Campbell, I'll take Campbell over them. So where he's at, I don't hate it. But that top 15 is questionable where they have some of these coaches.
Does your historical standing in the NFL matter on this list? It accordingly does for Sean Payton and Bill Belichick, but it doesn't for Matt LaFleur. 3 NFC title appearances.
So where did you find this graphic? You found it on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to the article, I have to point this out.
Who reads articles these days, honestly?
Well, Ross Tucker, who made the list, wrote an article that goes along with it explaining his decisions. And I'm just going to point out what he notes in the beginning. I know exactly how this goes. You ignore the introductory paragraphs, look at the rankings, identify a coach as too low, probably the coach of your team, and then criticize the entire list as being stupid without looking at the reasons why he's ranked there and the logic behind the selection. So, let's look at the logic behind the selection. I tried to account for what each coach has done with what they've been given for as long as they've been doing it.
That's the criteria?
That's what he uses.
So Kyle Shanahan should be higher.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So now look at this list in those eyes.
At least for the Broncos. He hasn't coached yet. So I don't know.
So in their career, what they've done with the players that they've had.
Okay, so totality.
Regardless of the team.
Okay, so Matt LaFleur, 17, 3 NFC title games, 3 division titles, don't give a fuck.
Well, that they might be looking at more of who he had as quarterback.
Then why is Robert Saleh so low on the list? He's got Aaron Rodgers now.
That's true. But also, if they're going off last year and they're going off situation, if they're factoring historical...
Throw that list back up, please.
If they're factoring historical context, Carroll, there's no way he's 9. He's got to be higher
Look at the list. Look very clear.
Look,
I want you to put on glasses for this, okay? Look very closely.
I can see it.
Look where Dan Campbell is.
Yes, 16. Yes.
Point out to me how many teams or coaches behind him made the playoffs last year. Mike McCarthy, Brandon
Playoffs.
Staley, Sean McDermott, and I believe that's it, correct? Am I correct by saying that? Yes, I'm correct.
Yes. Yep.
There are 3 coaches who recently have been to the playoffs more than Dan Campbell, and they're behind him. So, Mr. Hey, you're going to get offended because it's your team. Shut the fuck up, you bitch. One, Campbell's too high.
Yeah, but
He's earned and done nothing.
oh,
Wait, he's done nothing. Based on his reasoning. Mike McCarthy's been to the playoffs, won playoff games. Brandon Staley's been to the playoffs. McDermott's been to an AFC title game. Please explain to me what this criteria is.
I will, because like she laid out, his criteria is given what they have. So, okay, McDermott's made the playoffs, McCarthy's made the playoffs, LaFleur's made the playoffs, but who has the worst roster who won 9 games last year? It's
it the
Dan
worst
Campbell.
roster? Is it?
Not the worst
Because
roster, but he has a worse roster than who made the playoffs. Out of Staley, you're going to tell me Lions are better than the Chargers roster? I'll wait. McCarthy?
Okay.
You're going to tell me they're better than the Cowboys? Now they are, but last year they weren't.
Jeff, I got you.
Dan won 9 games with that roster last year.
The Lions were a top 10 offense last year.
But it's not like they were star-studded.
Among the teams that were in the top 10 in offense, only one team didn't make the playoffs, the Detroit Lions, in terms of yards per game. If you go to points per game, the top 10 teams, of all the teams, the only team to not make the playoffs were the Lions. And teams of points, yards, every fucking statistical category, the Lions were top 10. And among the top 10 teams, they were the only one that didn't make the playoffs. What?
Okay, now go to defensive stats. Where do they rank defensively? Like you could just
The Cowboys were 26th in defense. They made the fucking playoffs.
The Cowboys had a much better defense than the Lions. You cannot
26th in defense.
As an
Lions had a
overall-
top 10 defense over their last 7 games
and they
of the year.
still gave up 300 yards
Because
to
of
the
how
Panthers.
bad they were early on in the year.
No,
Don't
that
get
was
me
late
wrong.
in the season. That
Don't
was to
get-
the Panthers.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. What they did down the stretch, amazing. That doesn't negate your 1-6 start. That's why they missed the playoffs last year. Again, you're telling me, okay, based on what these guys have had to work with, how would I say they've done? Okay, well, Sean McVay won a Super Bowl. How is he not top 5? Kyle Shanahan's been to 5, or no, not 5, I apologize, 3 or 4 NFC title games, 1 Super Bowl. Is that not good enough? Is that not good enough, buddy?
Listen,
But you have fucking Brian Dable with a playoff win against Kevin O'Connell,
So he's 8th.
and he's 8?
Yeah, that doesn't make
Matt
any
LaFleur 17, Mike McCarthy, Brandon Staley, and I'm forgetting one more, Sean McDermott. All have accomplished much more than Dan. This is not a knocking Dan
Mike
segment, by the
McCarthy's
way.
also
I
behind
just
him.
don't get it. What's the criteria then? It can't. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking get it.
Yeah, because even if you base it off last year, given what they had, Sean Payton, you're just throwing him
He's
in the top
got him-
5 with no. He didn't coach last year. He was in the booth, or he was an analyst on Fox. So I don't get the context. The only point I'm making is I don't have a problem where Dan is. I don't, and I know you might disagree with where he is. Where would you put him?
I don't know. I actually have no issue.
Oh.
Wait, I don't have an issue with the ballpark number of where he is. He can be between 16 and 18.
You just don't like who's ranked behind him.
I don't like the criteria. I don't like the whole fucking list. It doesn't make any sense to me. Bill Belichick, number 2. Why?
Yeah, well, that definitely
Why?
is historical context there.
Given what he's worked with, shut the fuck up. Given what he's worked, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell was given a top 10 offense. Nobody says anything about that.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't. But saying
Matt
that,
LaFleur's quarterback didn't show up to camp with rookie wide. No, based on what they were given,
all
right?
See, that's how
His
you
defense was injured all last year. I can get on the excuse game just like we do for Dan with every coach. Sean McDermott lost Von Miller. Injuries on the offensive front.
Yeah, but you lost Von Miller. They still had a pretty damn good roster. Like it's
13
not like
wins.
Yeah.
13 wins. With all the adversity they faced.
The adversity they
22nd
faced with a top
22nd on
5
the list.
quarterback in Josh
22nd
Allen.
on the list. What a joke.
Like, And this is the thing. You talk about what Dan has had to work with. You look at the defense, all the rookies, one of the youngest rosters in the NFL, period. You bring up the offense, which, okay, at the end, you look at it, yeah, productive offense, but there's no way you could have told me at the beginning of the season that offense was going to be top 5. There's no way.
Throw it back up. Let's do this based on who underperformed and overperformed, okay?
Okay, throw it up.
Andy Reid, 1. He performed. I don't think it's under or over. I mean, I would say over, actually. I mean, consider how young their defense was. Belichick underperformed. Tomlin overperformed. Sean Payton, to be determined. Nick Sirianni overperformed. Kyle Shanahan overperformed with a fucking third-string quarterback.
Yeah, he did.
Sean McVay underperformed given that the 1 year coming off being the defending Super Bowl champions.
Right.
Not going to kill him for it. Brian Dable overperformed. Pete Carroll overperformed. Doug Peterson overperformed. John Harbaugh met expectations given the Lamar Jackson injury. Zach Taylor, again, met all expectations. You could argue overperformed. Got to another AFC title game.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Vrabel underperformed. Mike McDaniel, the Tua injury held them back, obviously.
Right.
Kevin O'Connell overperformed. Dan Campbell
overperformed.
I don't think that's fair to say he overperformed when it was a Jekyll and Hyde season. It was 1-6 underperformed, 8-2 overperformed.
Really overperformed.
So then it's like, well, what are they? So I don't think it's fair to say he overperformed.
But
you go to 17, LaFleur underperformed. Arthur Smith, way too high on that fucking list, underperformed. Ron Rivera's a fucking dumb fuck. Like, he should be 32. Ron Rivera's the biggest dumb motherfucker in the NFL. He's the first one I'm firing. If I had billions of dollars and I was buying the Washington Commanders, I would change them to the Washington fucking Idiots. I would have an FI as my fucking logo, and I would fire Ron Rivera day one. Brandon Staley,
I mean, he's a genius? Or are you going to
made the playoffs in the AFC with a 10-win record, okay? Blew, yes, a 27-0 lead. But they got to the playoffs for the first time with Justin Herbert. They met expectations last year outside of choking their balls out in the playoffs, okay? Mike McCarthy overperformed. 12-win team last year. They only lost to the bet. Wait, no. We're going based on over or underperformed. You tell me. The Cowboys underperformed? Please.
No, they met expectations.
They were a 12-win team going into last year? Please.
I knew they went over. The Cowboys, they do this. They win over 10 games every year.
Okay,
We're shocked they won 12 games.
Sean McDermott, 13-win team.
Okay.
Their player nearly dies on the field, losing the divisional round. Win a playoff game, losing the divisional round to the eventual Super Bowl champions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they underperformed. Their expectations were to get to an AFC title game. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Shock them. Put them all the way down to 22. Yeah, okay. Ron Rivera is the biggest fucking... I want to say the R word so bad.
What is up with you and
so
Ron
bad.
Rivera?
It's garbage, man. It's fucking garbage. It's fucking garbage.
He's catching strays today.
Mike McDaniel has no reason to be up there at 14. What has Mike McDaniel done that Dan Campbell hasn't? They're both the same coach. They've yet to make the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
They've yet to make the playoffs. Mike McDaniel was given one of the best offensive weapons in NFL history, and Tyreek Hill.
Now that's
you want to make
offense.
an argument? Get the fuck out of here, man.
Now that's an offense. and for Dan Campbell's sake, I know it was a tale of two seasons, but are we not going to are we going to hold him accountable completely for the 1-6 and not give him all the credit for 8-2?
We are.
So if you look at it in totality, they won 9 games.
They won 9 games, and they didn't make the playoffs.
Okay, but that's also
and he's higher than 4 coaches that made the playoffs.
But you're looking at just the playoffs. The
What are we
context
doing
is
this
given
for?
the situation they had. Do you think Mike McCarthy, Sean McDermott,
Jeff,
LaFleur,
let me ask you this:
when he had Aaron Rodgers, they all had better situations than Dan.
No bias here.
Yeah, when they were
1-6, what was the biggest issue with this football team? What was the one thing you were questioning more than anything?
Well, there wasn't one specific thing. You bring up coaching,
obviously
of course.
the defense, yes. But coaching.
Yes.
What's going
Coaching
on in
was part of
Detroit?
that.
Why can't they figure out the defense? They just got rid of Aubrey Pleasant. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Now look at the 8-2 team. The defense was performing at a much higher level. Mm-hmm. The offense was still giving you what they were giving you when you started the season.
For the most part.
And the coach, outside of Buffalo, and I have no idea how they didn't turn out for the Carolina game, but outside of a 2-game sample, was pretty good. Made solid decisions.
Yeah.
Didn't cost them the game. They won a 15-13 game, something along those lines against Green Bay, I believe, early on in that run. They were down 14 points, I believe, to Chicago going into the fourth quarter against the Bears in Soldier Field. Like, you go game by game.
Still won that game.
This wasn't one of the best X's and O's, one of the best coached teams in the NFL. There was a lot of fortune. There was a lot of good defense, a lot of timely turnovers and takeaways that they forced, rightfully so. They deserve all the credit. But to put out a list
I understand
where
that.
you have 3 coaches that have won playoff games literally last year, and you have them in the 20s for a guy that was 4-19-1 6 games into last year as a head coach, I think is a bit much.
Well,
I get the hype. Is it about the roster? Is it, they got the best situation going into this year? Because if you want to talk about situations, I think Dan's got a top 12 situation. I think he's got one of the 12 best situations in the NFL. Hell, I'd even argue top 10.
Well, if you go head-to-head coaching, at least with these teams, in Campbell's faced Peterson, he faced Dable last year. Took care of the Giants and took care of the Jaguars. Absolutely, actually blew them out at home. Blew the Jaguars out. So if we're going to give him credit for the 8-2 and talk about how impressive it is, he faced Doug Peterson and Dable during that stretch. Took care of them both. So are we going to now say, well, they didn't have as good of a team as the Lions? Are we going to give him credit for out-coaching both those guys? Like, that matters too. We talked about the Giants game on Monday. We said, wow, what a game by Dan. Out-coached Dable. And they took care of the Giants. But now it's a problem. He's 16.
It's not that now it's a problem.
So I don't So he beat
I don't have
Peterson
a problem
and
with
Dable.
Dan.
But
I don't have a problem with Dan here.
you're
you want to
bringing up playoffs.
Yes.
The coaches behind them made the playoffs. Given the situation, you got to look at the situation they have. Mike McCarthy had a better situation last year.
How many games do you think the Lions were going to win last year? What was your prediction? 8 and 9.
Yeah,
was
about
it
7,
not?
8 games.
So they
that
won one game more than your prediction.
Yes.
I had the same thing. 7, 8 wins.
So by
they ended up winning
definition,
9.
they overachieved.
Overachieved?
Would you expect 11, 12 wins?
No.
They overachieved.
Overachieving is going out and doing something nobody expects you to do. Right? Winning the division.
8-2 down the stretch.
Winning the division in Jacksonville, nobody expected. Getting to the playoffs and winning a playoff game with the Giants, unexpected. The Lions won 9 games, didn't make the playoffs. Ooh! Throw a fucking party?
No one's saying throw a party.
Well, again.
But I'm saying where he's ranked, I'm cool with it. And I'm going to stand by it.
I don't mind him at 16. But some of the coaches, Ron Rivera at 19, I want to have a fucking heart attack. All right, let's take a break.
If they win 11 games this year, he's going to keep climbing this list. Especially if they win a playoff game.
Let him earn it.
Yeah.
Make the playoffs. Win a division. Win a playoff game. Like, I'm asking for the fucking world here.
Well, yeah, Dable beat the fraudulent Vikings, and now he's top 8. So, you know what? Maybe he can jump even higher if he does something this year. Who knows?
Oh, God.